What is up? Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Life Podcast. I am Marcus Graham, joined by Dwayne McFarland, fresh out of the bunker, and we have made it through week 5. And we are here for the bye weeks, Dwayne. We're sort of joking before we started the show that for the regular, just fantasy football player, the manager, bye weeks are sort of like a moment to dread. For us, let's just keep it real. It's a little nicer. It's a mild breather, I guess, if you will, when we get to the bye weeks.
Yeah, it makes the stay in the bunker slightly, it makes it a little shorter, each week, may not sound like a lot, but like if you shave 4 teams off, like, it's quite a bit. Like when I'm writing the utilization report, each team takes me, 20 to 30 minutes. Early in the season it's always 30 minutes, but as I get, further along, unless there's changes, I get it down to about 20 minutes, sometimes even a little bit less if like nothing's going on. So you can imagine though, like if it's taking 20, 30, you cut 2 hours off of, what it takes to write that thing. So, it's a passion of love. So there's no complaints in it. Like, look what we're getting to do. But yeah, man, it is nice. It just keeps me fresh, keeps me sharp.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how much you love it, it's nice to get that 2 hours back to rejoin society at least for a little
It
bit.
is.
So it's definitely a good thing. We got plenty to talk about on this show. We will dive into the utilization report, which of course you can check out at fantasylife.com. We'll also talk about some players you might want to just say goodbye to, guys. It's time to throw back into the free agent pool as we start to get into the bye weeks. We'll also help you make some moves and kind of plan some strategy for the bye week since they do get going here in week 6. But let's start with some unfortunate news. That is Rashad Penny, unfortunately gone for the year. He has a broken fibula, is going to have surgery, and the Seahawks not expecting to have him back this year. That's the downside, and we certainly wish the best for Rashad Penny. Now we sort of turn to Kenneth Walker, and that's a guy that, Dwayne, I know you liked. I know a lot of people really liked coming into the season. The problem had been he was just sort of blocked because Rashad Penny was playing so well and getting so much opportunity. But now, if you haven't already run waivers yet, if you're still putting in claims, is there any doubt that Kenneth Walker should be the top priority for folks making free agent moves this week?
No, no doubt. Like 100% everything. Put it up, push it all in the middle on Kenneth Walker. Like you just don't get this many opportunities, Marcus, where everything truly lines up. And look, in a lot of your leagues, he's not going to be there. And I get a lot of people to reach out to me about this stuff. But in the majority, over 55% of leagues, Kenneth Walker is available, right? And so we've got to serve that broad audience. But even if you're someone that can't get him on the waiver wire, like I would be very aggressive in a trade, maneuver. Like this may as well be called the Seahawks show. I feel like we have for the last 3 weeks, we've basically been pumping up the Seahawks, and it's all worked out minus the injury, right? We wouldn't want that for Rashad Penny, but like it's really been like all the things that we've been talking about have honestly been kind of coming to fruition based on the data. We're not like fortune tellers, but like we look at the data and we see the trends, and like they've worked out in this case. So with Kenneth Walker, it's really the same thing. I mean, you've got an offense that's ascending. You've got an offense. I mean, the big thing really with Seattle, like, is just how many points they're scoring, right? And the fact that they've changed the way that they're handling the pace. And so those two things together, when you get to align that with having a young running back, a rookie that was an early second round pick that, and so far, Marcus, like what he's done this year, it's on a limited sample, but I mean, missed tackles forced per attempt, 0.43. The league average is 0.17. So, like, he's more than doubling that up. Like Kenneth Walker, and that's what you saw if you ever watched this guy play football on film. Man, just a very, very smooth operator. Kind of reminds me in a way of LaShawn McCoy, like his lateral agility. A little faster, like honestly, like once he gets downhill. But I mean, McCoy, obviously a really great player. So let's let Kenneth Walker earn that. But the other part of it, if you look at his explosive rush rate, 13%, the NFL average is 11.5%. And the other thing that's really interesting to me, Marcus, like, and get your thoughts here, this is a guy, and we briefly touched on this, that we were told, he didn't catch passes in college. And actually, I get it, folks. Like, I've looked at the data and the analytics, and typically, if a player doesn't catch the ball in college, a lot of times they won't in the NFL either. But Kenneth Walker, like, when you look at his talent profile and you look at how smooth of a player he is, like how fluid he is, like something tells me the dude can catch the ball. And then this year, what Seattle's done with him so far, he has a 23% targets per route run rate. 20%, if we go back historically, back to 2011, 20% is an RB1. So he's already above that in his small sample that he's had available to him. And then the other thing, Seattle's been putting him out there, and this isn't new. Like since week 2, they've been mixing him in on long down and distance situations. which tells you they trust him because that is the down in the NFL where you go man coverage and you blitz if you're a defense. And so, because that means it's at least 3 or more yards to go, 75 to 80% of the time, an NFL team is going to pass on third or fourth down with over 3 yards to go. So defenses know, like this isn't all rocket science, folks. Like the coaches actually are looking at numbers and they know what's going on. And so, knowing that Walker's been trusted in that situation, I think immediately he takes over all the early down work, in an offense that we like, that's been better than we thought it would be. But there's a chance, man, he could carve out some of this passing down work based on what we're seeing in targets per route run and the fact they've already been using him in long down and distance. And we saw Rashad Penny doing that after the Travis Homer injury. So I think there's a chance for him to be more than just an early down option.
I think what's encouraging about Walker and what has been encouraging about the Seahawks backfield is that it sort of whittled its way down from what we were afraid early in the season could be a 3 or 4 headed backfield to kind of basically two guys. I mean, you mentioned the Travis Homer injury. We're seeing a little bit less of DJ Dallas. It had been primarily the Rashad Penny show with some Kenneth Walker sort of sprinkled in. Now I think everybody maybe moves up one rung on the ladder. So that's now it's Walker that's getting most of this work. But it is encouraging to know that they trust him in the passing game. And so there is hopefully, for our sake at least, less reliance on the DJ Dallases, the Travis Homers of the world. And we can see Kenneth Walker get more of that. And I've seen people saying that Kenneth Walker has the potential to be a league winner. And I think in the sense of here it is, week end of week 5, start of week 6, and you're talking about picking up a guy that's going to get so much work in an offense that's scoring a lot of points that could potentially be very productive. I think there's some truth to that. I think there's some validity to that because we don't just stumble across these kind of guys on the waiver wire all that often. And a lot like we said with Mike Boone, this is a situation where he's going to be there, barring injury, the rest of the year. This isn't a Tyler Algier where at some point Cordero Patterson comes back and takes over some of those touches. This is Kenneth Walker's show as long as he stays healthy. So there's a lot of reason to, as you mentioned, kind of go all in, push all the chips into the center of the table on Kenneth Walker this week in waivers when you have the chance. He's not the only young player out there, though, that really has a positive outlook right now. You and I talked last week about Rashad White, and a couple weeks ago, the Bucks saying they wanted to get more guys in. I said I was skeptical until I saw it, and 2 weeks in a row now, we have seen it where the snaps are increasing. He's still getting a pretty good number of touches. Yes, Leonard Fournette is still the primary back, but Dwayne, with this offense starting to get healthy and starting to roll again, and some really favorable matchups, potentially points wise, this seems like a real good opportunity for Rashad White to start getting some more real opportunities in this offense.
Yeah, with Rashad White, I mean, really what we're looking at, Marcus, is the last guy that's remaining that could be like Kenneth Walker. Like, and we're never wanting to sit around and hope for an injury. Like, we want these players to be healthy. We want to see Rashad Penny. Like we've been talking about Rashad Penny, but it is what it is. And we know that Leonard Fournette is an older back. He is a guy that if he did go down, like this is a great situation for Rashad White. We've got an offense where the arrow is now pointed up. You've got Tom Brady now getting his receivers healthy. If you look at the pace that they're playing with, all those things are good. So the volume is going to be there for a player like Rashad White. But the big thing with his utilization is really just over the last 2 weeks. Like in a nutshell, the best way I can put it, and I think we may have mentioned this last week, like he's become Tony Pollard. Like if you put their utilization profiles right next to one another, they're the same. So if you look at Rashad White's snaps over the last 2 weeks, 40%. You look at his rushing attempts, 43%, 22%. Route participation's been 35 and 41%. Target share, 10 and 8%. So all of those things are really positive. So he's really carved out a potential standalone value role as this offense continues to gain steam. He could be a guy that could give you spike weeks if you're playing in a deeper league. If you're playing in like an 8-team, 10-team league, you're not going to put Rashad White into your lineup. Maybe on a bye week, you might need to, but mostly he's just there because if something happens with Leonard Fournette, like you absolutely want to have Rashad White on your roster. And I think that's the bigger macro takeaway. And we've talked about this a few times. There are certain players that just shouldn't be on a waiver wire really anywhere. And Rashad White is one of those. And right now, he's only rostered in 36% of Yahoo leagues. So he is out there a lot. And I know I went and looked at ESPN just to be sure. Only rostered in 37% of those. So over half the time, whatever league you're playing in, like we've got Rashad White available. And that just really shouldn't be the case. So whether you're going to grab him on your waiver wire, whether you're going to, grab him after the waiver's already run because he's still not, picked up in some of those leagues, like he's just one of those guys that if something does happen you're going to have either one, the number one waiver wire claim, or if you're playing a situation where you've got to use fab money, you're going to need to have a lot because it's going to take everything to go get him. So Rashad White, like, is the name when we're thinking about the young backs that are still remaining that are semi available.
And I think this is the time of year where it pays to be a little bit forward thinking, looking ahead to some of the weeks. And I look at the next couple of weeks. This week, the Bucks have the Steelers. Next week, I believe it's the Panthers. It's a couple of games where I would think their expected point total is going to be high, where I imagine they're going to be pretty favored in games, which means look, Tampa is a team that's playing for January and February. They I don't think have any real major concerns about the regular season. So I don't know that they want to necessarily wear out Leonard Fournette right now if they don't have to. So it seems like the next couple of weeks could be real good opportunities for White to get on the field, get some touches, keep the line moving, and save Fournette for when they need him when it comes to late in the season and into the postseason. Um, Rondell Moore is another one who I really liked coming into the season. I thought, especially with DeAndre Hopkins being suspended, that there was a real opportunity there. Unfortunately, injuries sort of put a wrench in that whole thing. I don't know about you, Dwayne, but I sort of hold to the fact that Greg Dortch stepped in and played well. I sort of use that as validation for my belief on what Rondale Moore could have been early in the season. But he started to pick some things up in the last week or two. Any concerns about what his role is going to be or what his usage is going to be, knowing that in a couple of weeks, Nuke Hopkins is going to be back in that offense in Arizona?
No, I think the macro takeaway here is you want young, talented players on your roster, right? And you just can't worry about some of that other stuff. Number one, like the Cardinals have to throw the ball a lot because they trail often, right? And, hopefully as their offense gets better and getting Nuke Hopkins back should be a component of making the offense better. All of these guys can actually make up for, fantasy points that may be lost in some of the target share and things like that by scoring more points, as an offense. That would also be great for Kyler Murray. Like, please, like, I've got a lot of Kyler Murray. I would love to see him scoring some more fantasy points. But with Rondell Moore and the other two guys we'll talk about here in a minute, like, these are just guys that shouldn't be out there on the wire. Like Rondell Moore right now, only 18% rostered over in Yahoo. Like, he is a former second round pick. They're moving him all over the place. His route participation has been there for 2 weeks. This last week, he came through with the fantasy points, 13.1. I know it's not huge, but that's still a top 24 finish, this last weekend. And he's a guy that we know is explosive. His target shares have been there 18% and 21%. So all the things that we like to see from a young, talented player, all pointed in the right direction for Rondell Moore. He's just got to stay healthy. But I mean, he's got an explosive skill set, and I think the offense could continue to improve. So he's a guy that I want to make room for on my roster no matter really where I'm playing at.
I'm waiting for the Cardinals offense to really take off. I mean, it's been just sort of stunted, especially in the first halves of games where they are struggling to consistently score points. I feel like that can't be the case forever. And maybe getting DeAndre Hopkins back is a key to that. I don't know what it is that they need to unlock them, but I think once they do, then there's so many pieces there because Marquise Brown is playing well. Zach Ertz is having a pretty good start to the season. I mean, hopefully they can get healthy in the backfield with James Conner. But I can't believe that this offense is going to continue to be so anemic in the first half of ball games, and I think that really outlook that improves the outlook for everybody involved there in Arizona. Over in Indianapolis, almost said Indiana. I guess it is the state of Indiana, but
Yeah,
over
you're
in
good.
Indianapolis, Alec Pierce has sort of come to life the last couple of weeks. And Dwayne, I don't know about you. I think this is encouraging for all of us who love Michael Pittman because this at least takes some of the pressure off of him. That there had been so much riding on him to be productive for that offense in order to be good. Alec Pierce not getting a ton of snaps, when you look at him compared to the other guys, in that wide receiver room, but he seems to be the obvious complement, at least the last couple of weeks, to Pittman there in Indy.
Yeah, but his role's growing, right? His route participation has been a little bit low, to your point. It had been at 47% and 40% in weeks 3 and 4. But this last week, he saw a high on the season at 74%. Now, he still worked behind Paris Campbell. I just don't think that's going to last very long. They've let Paris Campbell basically be the number two wide receiver all season, and he's not demanding any looks. Like, he's not creating targets. So, Alec Pierce is coming out, and the positive that you see with him is 20% targets per route run. If you look at him over the last 3 games, because remember, he missed week 2, 25%, 35%, and 25%. And that's a number that we like to use whenever we've got a player that we know hasn't really been in a full-time role. Now, you can't use that if they've only been out there for 10% of the snaps and be like, oh man, look, like they're going to have a 40% target share. No, that's not how it works. And you also want to look like, okay, are they running like a full route tree? Or are these just gimmick plays? And none of those things are the case here with Pierce. We've got a decent enough size sample that we can feel good about it. He's out there running the full route tree. His average depth of target on all of these things have been 11 has been 11.9. So it's not something where he's just getting a bunch of screen passes or something at the line of scrimmage. It's very positive because those numbers show that, wow, if all of a sudden this guy's and I think he will eventually overtake Paris Campbell, and you just want to be ahead of this. Once he's at that 85, 90%, I mean, we could be talking about a guy with a 22, 23% target share, maybe 24% on the season. And it's just really all about him and Michael Pittman because no one else has really stepped up either, Marcus. Like, I mean, the tight end room is really a split across like three players. Yeah, we like Naheem Hines. We'll have to see what's going on with his health, but he's not really out there demanding a lot of looks. They give him some looks. So Pierce is a guy that, wow, is available again, like Rondell Moore, pretty much available everywhere. He's available even more than what Rondell Moore was. So he's a guy that I definitely want to be ahead on. I'm not crazy about the Colts offense. It's definitely, there's a lot of things to not like about the offense. But they are running a lot of plays because they're trailing. So 41.4 dropbacks per game and non-overtime. That's the 11th most in the NFL. And then if you look at, their time of possession has at least been decent, like, they're 10th, 51%. They're not like a real fast offense or anything, but there is enough, I think, to support two weapons. Like if everything was working perfectly for Indy, like, yeah, you might get more touchdowns out of Alec Pierce, but like they want to run the ball still. And that would potentially create a scenario where, like, crap, there's only room for Michael Pittman. But because of the way that the game scripts are working, I think that there's enough room to really support two of these guys. I don't know that it's going to be huge weeks just because Matt Ryan looks very suspect to me right now.
Yeah, Matt Ryan looks, let's just be honest, he looks bad right now. And to your point, though, they're running a lot of plays. They're also throwing the ball a little bit higher than league average, in part because, as you mentioned, they've been trailing a lot in games. Now, we'll see if that means they start to lean on Jonathan Taylor a little bit more to try and slow some clock down, try to keep the opponents on the sideline. We will see. But this was a team very much in need of a second pass catcher. They had been trying a number of guys, and none of them seemed to be working. So I think there's a real opportunity for Alec Pierce. And I think, again, we talk about sort of looking ahead. This feels like a guy that you might want to pick up, even if you're not using him this week per se. Maybe you're stashing for those weeks when you're going to be a little bit shorthanded at wide receiver, whether because of buys or injuries or what have you, and could potentially get a whole lot of looks as long as other guys aren't stepping up. I think there's opportunity there. Speaking of opportunity, George Pickens has seen a lot of opportunity the last couple of weeks. The Steelers' offense, you talk about an offense to not like. I looked today and
Mm.
was blown away when I saw that Pittsburgh has 2 passing touchdowns all year long. Like, that's it. I made sure I looked at it several times to make sure I wasn't seeing things, that I was reading it right, but that's it. But with the change from Trubisky to Kenny Pickett, it seems like, at least for the short term, George Pickens seems to be the apple of Kenny Pickett's eye. So while the overall outlook for the Steelers offense seems bad, there does seem to be at least another wide receiver that maybe we can occasionally hang our hat on there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I mean the positive, right? Always looking for the positive on our show here, Marcus. The positive is we saw them eclipse the 300-yard passing mark finally. Yes, yes, the touchdowns, we still need those to come, but it was nice just to see this offense not stuck at, like, 190 passing yards. So I think that was a positive for Pickett. Obviously, towards the end of the game, they were getting blown out. Basically, he was just facing a lot of shell coverage, but they had to keep throwing the ball. But he got there. He at least did it. He did something that we haven't seen yet, from the offense. So I think that that's something that we can definitely kind of lean into. But you mentioned it with Pickens. Yeah, looking really good over the last couple of games. This week was only a 16% target share. Really, the 2 weeks before were even better, 31%, 21%. But over the last 2 weeks, we've got two top 24 PPR finishes with 14.3 and 16.2 fantasy points. And the thing with Pickens, I don't know how much you've got to watch him, Marcus, but like when I go back and it's just like he just looks good. Like he
Mhm.
looks good in everything he does, whether he's run blocking, whether he's just running to the sideline to take a breather, whether he's catching a ball down the sideline, any one of those things. Like George Pickens just looks really good at everything he does. And he looks like one of these guys that you're just like, there's something different, about this dude. And I just think it's kind of the opposite for Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool had a nice rookie season, and now every time I see anything, it's like, yeah, they're trying to target him, but they're trying to do some things with him, and it just doesn't feel right, right? Doesn't it looks kind of awkward almost. And then you pan back over and you see Pickens again. You're like, yeah, yeah. Like I don't know. They're both out there plenty, So there's going to be opportunities for all these guys. Deontay Johnson's still the main guy. He's going to earn most of the targets. But I feel like Pickens, the nice thing is they're not just having him run 100% go routes anymore. They're working him in, letting him do some other things. In fact, like one of his really nice catches last week, he was working down the sideline and then came back to the quarterback. So using, that vertical ability to really get the cornerback off of him and then work back to the quarterback. So a lot of things I think we're seeing. And again, it's just continuing this theme of these young players. We started off talking about, Kenneth Walker and how everybody's going to want him now if he's not already rostered. We talked about Rashad White at the running back position. Now you talk about Alec Pierce, Rondell Moore, and George Pickens. These are all guys that have huge upside. And remember, injuries happen. Like teammates could get hurt. There's a lot of different things that could work in these player scenarios. Again, we're not rooting for the injuries, but when they happen, you want the guys that can take that next step because they have the talent and actually just really, seize the moment when that occurs. And I believe all the guys that we've just talked about, across these four players are all capable of doing that in a really, really big way.
And it's sort of when it comes to Pickens, reinforces the idea that the Steelers have done a really good job at scouting the wide receiver position over the last few years. And yes, I know Chase Claypool isn't quite the same guy, but as you mentioned, had the big breakout rookie season. Side note, I really thought that moving him to the slot was going to sort of change things for him. And look, I don't know, maybe it's the quarterback situation, maybe it's the offense as a whole. But as you mentioned, it hasn't quite worked out. But George Pickens seems to be sliding in and doing a pretty good job. Uh, Real quick though, do you have any big tips for folks as we get into the bye weeks? I know this week there aren't a ton of fantasy stars, but there are some notable guys that are going to be absent. Any just top line ideas for folks to get ready for these weeks?
Yeah, I mean, and we'll hit on several of these guys as we work through. Like, we're gonna work through some of the utilization stuff. So a lot of these players are going to be guys that are available, on the wire. And then I know later we'll talk a little bit about some guys that can be cut. But the big thing is like you don't, if you can avoid cutting like the young upside talent like this, I'm always trying to do that. I'm much more likely to lean into cutting a veteran that just hasn't been producing to this point, right? Like an Allen Robinson, something like that. And then, just making sure that you're really working through the injury report stuff because every week, like we have something pop up that it's like, wow, there were these two injuries, and a lot of times it can happen late in the week, and I can go grab a player, right, that I can just plug into my offense, and maybe get 10 to 12 points. The main thing is being careful. The biggest mistake I see people make on waivers, I'd be interested in your thoughts too, Marcus. I see them dropping, really good players sometimes, to go pick up something for just 1 week. So just
Mm.
really think through who it is you're dropping. And the task I will a lot of times put myself through is if I drop this player, how quickly is a league mate going to pick them up? That's one way to think about it. But I mean that can even steer you wrong at times because you may think that on a name like Allen Robinson, and honestly, your response should be, "Well, who cares at this point? Like Allen Robinson hasn't done it." Honestly, I would rather carry George. All the players we just talked about, I would carry over Allen Robinson into a
No, I
bye
think
week.
you're right.
I would drop Robinson for all of these.
No, I think you're right because the Rams offense has been just a mess so far this season. And I think sort of along the lines of what you're saying, if you are making big waiver moves this week or in the weeks to come, if there are guys out there that have a shelf life of more than just 1 week, I think that's where you sort of focus your attention. And I know that's not
Yeah,
always the case. Sometimes you're
yeah.
just trying to fill a spot. I totally get that. But if you're going to make a move, if there's somebody out there that whether the matchups are good for the next couple of weeks or their opportunities are growing in their respective offenses where it looks like they have some staying power. I feel like those are the best options there. There's nothing more frustrating. You pick up a guy and you're just targeting a matchup for a week and then you're sort of shuffling through, especially if you have to cut
Let me
somebody
ask you
to do
something
it.
on that, Marcus,
Yeah.
because like I think there's varying opinions like on the strategy of how you would do this. But like if you're playing in a pretty deep league, right, where there's not a lot on the waiver wire, like I will actually just play someone that I don't, rather than drop something that I really like for the course of the season. Like, I'll play a Rashad White, right?
Mhm.
Over trying to go pick up, maybe even an Eno Benjamin for the week. Eno's going to be fine. Like, he's probably, if you've got both those other guys out, he's going to be a good play this weekend. But if it means that I got to drop Rashad White to make it happen, I'm not doing it. Like, I'll take the 8 points from, 7, 8 points from Rashad White, and I'll miss out on the 20 from Eno. I think it depends on your league, but
Right.
do you have a thought process around that?
No, I've done that where I've looked out on the waiver wire and I've seen guys that, maybe do have some upside for the week, but because I don't want to blow up my roster, because I do like a certain player over the course of the long haul, I may just ride it out and sort of hope for the best. And even if that player, that I'm holding on to doesn't necessarily have a big week, hopefully there's somebody else on your roster or in your lineup that picks up the slack. So I
It was
think,
just a great week to bring it up
yeah.
because I had so many people reach out, when the Rashad
Oh
Penny
yeah.
thing happened because we had talked about Kenneth Walker so much last week, and they were like, "Man, I saw the Kenneth Walker stuff. I wanted to keep him. I had to release him, because it wasn't a bye week, but it was an injury, right? I had to release him to pick up so and so to start, right? And now this, you get the sad face tear emoji, and so just something to remember. Like I just
Yeah.
think I lean towards the long term, especially in leagues that don't have a lot, available on the wire.
And I get it. I saw a lot of people saying, "Yeah, I just let go of Kenneth Walker," and sort of frustrated. I mean, it was in that respect, you can't predict it. It's sort of bad timing.
Really, that's
Totally,
just
I
their
understand.
bad. They should be listening to this podcast.
You're right. Exactly. That'll teach you. That will absolutely teach you. It's a good point to get into the utilization. Oh, by the way, we do have a tool over at Fantasy Life. You go check that out, especially when it comes to trying to figure out fab budgets and how much you should bid. There are tools there to sort of let you know what the general public is thinking about certain players as well. So you can put in kind of what you're willing to wager and to get some feedback on whether or not that potentially is going to be successful. But a whole lot there to go check out. So be sure to dive on in over at fantasylife.com. All right, now let's dive into the utilization report. As we get back to Seahawks chat here on the Fantasy Life podcast,
It is a
let's start
Seahawks show.
right. Let's start with Gino Smith, who look, I don't think we can make jokes about him anymore. He's playing legitimately good football. And I think we went into last week cautiously optimistic, right? It's one thing when he's putting up big numbers against bad defenses. This past week, he was going up against a pretty good Saints defense and still gave you a quality number fantasy wise. So I think the jokes we can stop now. Geno Smith. So my question to you is Geno Smith a legit QB1 for the rest of the season?
Yep, I'm treating him that way. I think we've seen enough, man. He's got the weapons. He's played well. We've talked about everything they've done with the offense. Now, last week they didn't run a ton of plays because the Saints were just running the ball down their throat. Like the time of possession was all messed up. But luckily, that pace was able to keep them in it, and then Gino really came through in a big way. I mean, if you look at him, he's averaging 304 passing yards over the last 3 games. He's got 2 or more touchdown passes in every game except for one. He had 0 in week 2 against the 49ers, but he had 2 against the Broncos, 2 against the Falcons, 2 against the Lions, and then 3 this last weekend, to your point, against a better defense than the Saints. I mean, look, I don't know. Like, there's nothing for me that I can look at to be like, oh man, this is fake for Gino. Big time throw rate per PFF is 7%. That's well above the league average. Turnover worthy plays only 3.5%. Completion percentage looks good. I mean, everything. And and he's pushing the ball down the field. He's got a great completion percentage, and his average depth of target is 8.9. And his completion percentage is 75. His adjusted completion percentage, which gets rid of drops and throwaways, like 81%. Like at that ADOT, that's really, really good. So everything he's doing like is above what we would expect, above expectations, versus NFL averages over the last 3 seasons. So I think, yeah, you got to buy into Gino. Like I would start him, like he should be on your roster over Russell Wilson. I would drop Russell Wilson for him. I would drop Matthew Stafford for him. I would drop Aaron Rodgers for him. I would play him. I don't want to necessarily drop. I might want to keep 2 of these, but I would play him over Derek Carr. I would play him over Kirk Cousins. There could be matchups, right, with those 3 where you may be deciding between the 3. But man, like I think he's a low end QB1. I mean, obviously he's ranked a lot higher than that. I think what is he right now? QB4? I think he's
Mhm.
QB4,
Yeah.
QB5 on the season. He's the number 1 graded passer in PFF passing grade right now in the NFL. Like, it's
It's
crazy.
amazing. It's amazing. And part of what you were saying, and I think you're 100% correct, but let's just pause and think that in the year of our fantasy football ball Lord 2022, we're talking about playing Geno Smith over Aaron Rodgers. Like it is
I
a
know.
completely factual, logical statement, just one that I never thought we would be saying at any
I
point. But
know,
this
man.
is
It's
amazing.
wild, and it's like the Packers just have multiple factors, right? We don't really have a good receiving core. They are very slow in pace. They want to run the football when they can. And, Gino's got like all the opposite things working. right, in his favor. Obviously he's the main component. He has to be playing good to enable all this. If he doesn't play good, none of this matters. Like if Gino Smith is playing like Marcus Mariota, nobody cares, right? But he's playing like Gino Smith right now, so it makes everything work.
Yeah, it absolutely makes everything work. And I will say this: I was also sort of worried about, you know, we got really hyped on Jared Goff, and then he went out and laid an egg against the Patriots. I don't I don't feel the same as I was sort of diving into what Gino has done this year. I don't know that we're going to have that major, face plant. And not to say that Gino won't have a down game because that's just the way things work. It's how things happen. But you look at Goff and he was putting up decent touchdown numbers and having a bad defense that was forcing him to throw the football all the time. With Gino, he's actually putting up good yardage numbers as well as being a lot more efficient throwing the football than Jared Goff has been. So I feel like this has some staying power. Whereas
And
I
their
guess
defense is
okay.
terrible. So
Yeah,
it's like
that
it's the
defense is bad.
perfect fantasy cocktail. You've got the pace
Absolutely.
you want to see. He's got the two weapons in Metcalf and Lockett. He's playing great, and their defense can't stop anyone. Like,
Anybody.
I mean, it's honestly sometimes you get these. We talk about these perfect storms. That's what's happening right now for Geno Smith. So my thought is, man, you just ride it, and you know what? You could be wrong in 3 or 4 weeks. It happens. Aaron Rodgers could just go on a complete heater, but you can't we can't continue to wait forever. We can't
Right.
pine away waiting on Matthew Stafford. Like, come on, like we gotta move on. Like we've got a better option here, man. I'm hooking up with Gino. Like I'm done with you, Matthew.
I mean, especially now we're a third of the way through the fantasy regular season. So yeah, the time to wait is pretty much over. So I was checking out the Fantasy Life newsletter, which you can sign up for absolutely free at fantasylife.com. And it mentioned one day a sleeper running back who has completely taken over the backfield. And I didn't really have to scroll very long before I figured out. Yeah, it's Raheem Mostert. Because a lot of us, myself included, came into the season thinking Chase Edmonds was going to be the lead back down there in Miami. We liked him because he caught the football. He seemed to be the guy who was going to get most of the snaps. And here we are 5 weeks into the season, Dwayne, and Raheem Mostert has completely completed a kind of a hostile takeover in that backfield. I mean, this is his job at this point, to the point that I feel like Chase Edmonds on a lot of fantasy rosters is now expendable.
Yeah, Chase Edmonds can pretty much be cut. Uh, you know, but when you look at Mostert, 72% of the snaps, 69% of the snaps over the last 2 games, rushing attempts, 68%, 69%. And then the big thing, taking over the passing down work from Chase Edmonds. Like that's the thing, like we wanted from Chase Edmonds, right? But we're not getting 2 minute offense, 100% in week 4 and 89% in week 5 to Raheem Mostert. And then you have the long down and distance stuff that we talked about a little bit earlier with some of the other backs, 60% each of the last 2 games. So when we say every down back, like those are the things I'm looking for because sometimes it can look like a back was really the every down player. Anytime you're at 65, 75%, you're basically getting into every down back, workload, into that realm. But sometimes game script can push things that way. Like early in the season, we would see James Robinson pushing towards 70%, but then you look over and you're like, oh, but none of the passing down work. That meant if a game script changed, what was going to happen to James Robinson? He was going to go down. Well, what's happened with the Jaguars? We've seen that over the last couple of weeks. Not leading, not playing, from ahead all the time. What's happened to James Robinson? He's disappeared because he's dependent on the game script and scoring touchdowns, which is really kind of where Raheem Mostert started the season. In week 2 and 3, he was growing, but he was not getting that passing down work. Now, over the last 2 weeks, they've just given all that to him. So, yeah, I think Raheem Mostert, and he's pretty much rostered. I mean, you folks should check. 30% of the time, he's not, but he's a guy that you can also probably still target in a trade fairly cheap. He hasn't blown up. This last week, he scored 19.2 PPR points. I wouldn't go nuts with him. He is an older back. He's 30 years old. He doesn't have a ton of tread on him, but he's not necessarily been able to stay healthy. So I don't want to like get folks so excited on Raheem Mostert that they're trying to go all in and make trades that would maybe give away assets that you and I would be like, whoa, 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 like you know how it happens sometimes. You mention somebody on TV probably, and then you'll get a message from someone, hey man, look at this trade I made, and you're like, oh man, that's not really what I said. So I want to be careful here, but all signs point to we've got an every down back. We just need the Dolphins to have a functional quarterback. Like, knock on wood for both, like Tua's health, Teddy Bridgewater, both suffering concussions, very serious stuff. But Skylar Thompson came out there and did his best, for being a 7th round rookie. But we need Bridgewater or Teddy back under, we need Bridgewater or Teddy. We need Tua or
or both, right?
Bridgewater, yeah, or both. Like, we would take both. Like, we want both to be healthy. But we need one of those two guys back out there under center because we need the offense rolling. You can have all the utilization you want in the world, and if your offense is really terrible, it can like just really well, you look like Najee Harris when that happens. Let's be honest, we got a really good example of what that looks like this year, and it's called Najee.
Yeah, you talk about Mostert. Obviously, there was some thought that he could be successful just because he was familiar with the system, having played for Mike McDaniel in San Francisco for those years. But you're right, health has sort of been an issue. And yeah, there's nothing worse when you say, "Hey, man, trade for this guy," and then somebody will send you like, "Hey, so I traded away CD Lamb for Raheem Mostert. Did I do good?" And I'm
I
like,
know, and you're like,
"No, that's
"No."
no, that's not what you're supposed to do." So, but I do like Mostert. He was a guy I took some shots on sort of later in drafts, just on the chance that maybe he would get more opportunity. It has come a lot faster than I would have anticipated. And you're right. If they can just get some decent quarterback play, keep getting Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle down the field, I think that makes things better for everybody down there in Miami. You talked about James Robinson, which seems like a good way to sort of pivot to Travis Etienne. I thought coming into this year, we'd see a lot of ETN early in the season, and it was sort of transition to James Robinson as we got later in the year. But it has sort of been the opposite, where James Robinson came out of the gates quickly, surprised all of us, played well. The last 2 weeks, though, the game script has been a lot heavier toward ETN. I think the positive, since as you mentioned, we want to be silver linings around here. The positive is that look, both these guys are good and both these guys are viable. But are we going to start to see maybe more of a reliance on Travis Etienne for the Jaguars going forward?
Yeah, it's a weird situation because the Jaguars, I think everything hinges on what are the Jaguars? Are the Jaguars really this team that we thought would not be good and that would be in a lot of trailing scripts like we thought to begin the season? If that's the case, that's really where a lot of Travis Etienne's projectable value came from, was that he could be like a DeAndre Swift. Still have someone else like a James Robinson, Jamal Williams, stealing a lot of the carries inside the 5, getting 30, 40, 50% of the rushing work, but knowing that game scripts would work out in a way, especially in PPR and half PPR leagues, that Travis Etienne would just have to be on the field all the time, right? That's really what you were banking on if you were taking Etienne, that plus his talent profile. If you were taking him in round 3, 4, 5, of your fantasy draft, depending on what kind of league that you were drafting in. I know that sounds crazy now. After 2 weeks, into the season, people thought it was the craziest thing. But now you look at it, and the Jaguars have not really been very good. I mean, this was against the Texans the last week. They could not get ahead on the Texans. They, in fact, fell behind. And so what we've seen so far is whenever you've got the Jaguars down by 4 or more points, 65% snap share to Travis Etienne. So it's basically what we thought it was going to be. The Jaguars have just been, out kicking their coverage or playing, they've been really overperforming versus what they would be. So I think it really all comes back to, interested in your thoughts here, like what are the Jaguars? Like, are they a bad team? Are they a good team? Are they somewhere in between? I know that's the easy answer, but if it's somewhere in between, it's going to make it honestly maddening for ETN and Robinson because when the game scripts do go well, that's when you get James Robinson weeks. When they lead, it's all about James Robinson. Whenever they're trailing, it's going to be all about Travis Etienne.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess like you said, the easy cop out answer is that they are somewhere in between. I still think, look, I think the way this is, you have either one of these guys, it's hard to keep them out of your lineup just because both guys have the chance to be productive. And I had a feeling this past week was going to sort of lean more toward ETN. I thought he was going to get some opportunities, but if I have James Robinson, I'm very hesitant, depending on who else I have, to sit him on my bench just because when he does get the ball and he gets those opportunities, he has been so very good. I think and maybe the answer sort of lies at quarterback with Trevor Lawrence because we're still sort of trying to figure out who he is as a quarterback. And there are some weeks when he makes some plays and you're like, okay, this is the guy that's supposed to be this generational talent that went number one overall. And then there are times where it's just like, wait a minute, what is happening here? And we can't figure it out. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Weirdly, I will say this week feels like a James Robinson week simply because the Jaguars' recent history against the Colts suggests they are going to very much be in this game, maybe even leading. It was one thing when they were sort of taking advantage of Carson Wentz, but they've also taken advantage of Matt Ryan earlier in the season. So this might just have the makings of a James Robinson game. Um, that's sort of more, I think, analysis by vibes than by any sort of actual,
I haven't
numbers
looked at
here.
the lines or anything yet. Like, I'll start that process later tonight, doing my projections for the week, and my rankings. So I'll get back to you tomorrow, Marcus.
All right, sounds good.
But
Sounds good.
this last week though, they were favorites. Like we
Mhm.
thought that it would be a James Robinson, week. And it turned
It
out
wasn't.
that that's why I worry about the Jaguars. What are they really? They could not, come in and just beat the Texans. That's kinda concerning. Like, if that's kinda the trend we're headed towards, that makes me lean to ETN being the more valuable asset over the course of the season. But again, we're still reacting, to one game at a time, it feels like right now with the Jaguars. Like, "Oh, they're good. Oh, they're bad. Oh, man, they had the Eagles down and then they lost. It's okay. Good try. Oh, you couldn't beat the Texans? Like, what the heck?" Like, so it's all over the place.
Well, and what's going to hurt that even more is the fact that every team in the AFC South is deeply flawed in some way. So it's not
Yes.
like we're getting any answers, any clarity on that division as a whole. Want to look at a couple of wide receivers. First, Michael Gallup, who it's nice to see him back. Certainly, the Cowboys could have used some help at the wide receiver spot, and getting Gallup back is important. Is he? How much does he rely on having Dak Prescott there? I mean, is it a better outlook? I mean, I know. Look, I know everybody's outlook is better with Dak Prescott there at quarterback in Dallas, but can he survive another week or two if it is Cooper Rush that's still under center?
Well, the way I'm looking at Gallup is if he's available on your wire, which he's available in roughly half of the league. So he's right at that cut line to whether we write about someone or really talk about them a lot, but right at half the leagues. And so that definitely shouldn't be the case. I think there are a lot of positives about what's going on with for a player that really had a late season, serious knee injury and to already be back out on the field starting in week 4. His route participation over the last 2 weeks has gone from 85% to 89%. And in week 5, he had a 33% target share. Now, CeeDee Lamb was still the leader with 47%. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, man, is a target hog right now,
Mm.
35% on the season. But Gallup coming out and pulling down a 33%, and he's not playing at 100% yet. So I think that's really encouraging. And then to answer the other part of your question, like we just know the offense is going to get more healthy. We know once you have Dak back, and Cooper Rush has been fine, it's just been that they've really tried to shell up and play this super conservative game. Now the matchups they've been in, and because they've been able to lead, like even the Rams just kind of rolled over. It was kind of like I kept waiting. Like, that meme of the guy holding the stick and he's
Do
poking on something. It's like
something.
do something. I kept waiting. Like, are the Rams going to do? And I'm a Cowboys fan. I was like, are the Rams going to do anything? The answer was no. The Rams did not do anything. Like they were not, jabbed with a sharp sticks, sharp enough. So with Gallup, I think those are the positive things. Definitely shouldn't be on your waiver. A little hesitant about starting him, and pushing him too far up the board. But I think you can already consider him really probably a low end wide receiver 3 and a 12 teamer. If you want to be a little more conservative on him, I think you put him in the high end wide receiver 4 part of the conversation. So I think it will come down to matchups. But once we have Dak Prescott back, and once the Cowboys open things a little, and I don't know, like Cooper Rush has actually played really well. We just want the offense where we see the volume. Like, because the Cowboys are still doing some other like underlying things that tell us like the volume is going to return. So, for example, like if you look at the neutral play clock remaining, so seconds remaining in neutral game scripts, 11.3. That's the second best in the league. Like, we talk about the Seahawks and how they've improved in that area. Like the Cowboys and the Bucks are like at the top when it comes to those things. So even though they've been running the ball more, throwing the ball less than the league averages across all game scripts except trailing, we've actually seen them able to run enough plays because that pace is there. So as you get Prescott back, game scripts change. You're going to see more passing on top of that. You're going to see a potential explosion in the number of plays that you're seeing from the Cowboys. Right now, they're running 58.8 regulation plays per game. I think that number will be more like 67, 68 when we have Dak Prescott back, just because the nature of the way the offense is going to work and the way that the passing game will set things up. And so that's going to be really good for Gallup if he can be even at a 20, 23, 24% target share in an offense like that. Like it's going to be really good. And it's going to be good for Dak too, because we just didn't know what to expect with Gallup. So if you come out and earn a 33% target share in your second game back, like earning targets is a skill. And so you have to be able to do the things to make your quarterback trust you. And Gallup's already doing that. That's really positive.
Yeah, I've said about Cooper Rush is the offense is not obviously as explosive with Cooper Rush at quarterback. That's not really a surprise, but he's been very good about knowing where to go with the football. That's why CD Lamb has kept his value. I think that's why Michael Gallup will have some value, just because Cooper Rush is not he's not throwing to some obscure targets that nobody is thinking about. He's going to the guys who are the main playmakers in the offense, and that is a skill that we all certainly appreciate playing fantasy football. So I think that helps Gallup. I want to ask you about Jacoby Myers, because there was a lot of Twitter conversation about him, especially a lot of people saying, I don't know why this guy is so available in so many leagues. Because, yes, he runs the most routes there in New England mostly. He's going to get most of the targets there. But I also look at him as a guy that production wise, it's been fairly, as the kids would say, mid. And it's a passing game that at best is sort of mid. So, on the one hand, yes, he's getting a lot of opportunities. But on the other hand, if I'm a casual player, especially if I'm in a 10 team, maybe even a 12 team league, and I look at Jacoby Myers and his recent history, there's nothing about him on the surface that gets me really super excited. But I guess this is one where we just sort of look at the utilization and see that that is where the potential upside lies with a guy like him.
Well, I think the biggest thing for Jacoby Myers is over his career, he's been a target earner, right? And you have to be skilled to earn targets. It's unlike running back. Like you can turn around and hand the ball to any running back. Now, if a running back is skilled, like they can make that worth more fantasy points once they get it, right? But they really need the offensive line to be good. There's a lot of things going on there. But with receivers, the number one thing is, can you put yourself into a situation to demand a target? Like anyone can get like a 10, 12, 13% target share, because a lot of that can just be set up as design. You could be the second read on a play where someone else is getting doubled. But once you start getting to like 15%, even that, like, you'll see a lot of players able to get to that mark, even replacement players. But once you're in the levels that he's at, like in his last two games he's played this season, 39% and 38% target shares. And this is something he's been doing for his whole career. So I agree with you. The offense is mid. The quarterback play right now is definitely suspect. That's mid. But Jacoby Myers is really good. The only thing that's ever been missing from Jacoby Myers, and to your point with the offense being mid, I don't know if this is going to change. He just hasn't scored touchdowns. And he's not a huge yak guy. He's not going to do a lot with it after the catch. But we know what these slot kind of receivers that can get really high target shares look like. They look like Julian Edelman. And you can have a year where they might score 7, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. And on the years they do that, they completely explode. On the years that they don't, they still are giving you a wide receiver 3 pretty much every week, even though you may not be hyper excited about it. And there's just really not anybody else on this roster. Devontae Parker is Devontae Parker. Nelson Aguilar can't stay healthy. Tyquan Thornton is a rookie that was drafted too high. Kendrick Bourne has been out. So it's pretty much Jacoby Myers. I think he's hands down the best player on the team outside of Ramondre Stevenson, who we may want to touch on here in a second because we got some injury news with Damien Harris. But Jacoby Myers, the way I look at him, man, he's almost just like he's like your Whoopi. You're like, I need a wide receiver 3 that's like a Whoopi. I just feel nice and safe. My pacifier, like it's Jacoby Myers. I know I can put him in the lineup. He's not going to dud me. He may not, to your point, get me super excited. I may not, if I go to a party tonight, I'm not going to tell everybody about Jacoby Myers being in my lineup. I'm be talking about Kenneth Walker, all these other guys. But really, when I come home and I got to lay my head on the pillow, Jacoby Myers, I can do that when he's in my lineup.
So you mentioned Ramondre Stevenson, and it does feel like a good time to mention the fact that we got the news on Tuesday that Damien Harris dealing with a hamstring injury, and he's expected to miss several weeks. We're not sure exactly the timeline, but definitely going to miss this week's game and probably the following week as well. So I guess the easy answer is it's Ramondre's season, right? I mean, we liked him anyway. The running game had been maybe the more consistent part of that Patriots offense, so it's got to be all systems go with Ramondre Stevenson now.
Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson season.
Yep.
That's a mouthful. Say that 3 times really fast, Marcus. Let's see what happens. But yeah, man, last week we saw that injury happen pretty early, and there wasn't really anyone available or active that they could do anything with. But I mean, 90% of the snaps, 74% of the rushing attempts. So if you've got a player like him that's going to get between 60 and 75% of the rushing attempts, and then we've already talked about in the past that he was getting all that passing down work, and we've seen his target shares be pretty nice. Like last week, he was at 10%, but his targets per route run on the season are still at a 20%. That's really good. Yeah, he's a high end RB1, like even on a bad offense, because he's not just going to be a guy that is going to get a lot of carries. He's also still going to remain involved in the passing game, and so this is a great scenario, for Ramondre Stevenson right now. Yeah, I haven't, like I said, I haven't done my rankings yet, but I'm just sitting here thinking about him on the surface. There's no way he's not going to be in my top 10. Like probably going to be in my top 8. Like if I had to say right now, he might make the top 6. He'll for sure be in the top 8.
I am curious to see where the fantasy industry is going to be on him as a whole. I mean, everybody's excited about him. People loved him anyway, but it does feel like on the whole, we're going to be very, very high on Ramondre Stevenson coming in this week. Want to pivot now as we get ready to kind of wrap things up to guys that it's probably time to say goodbye to. And this is not in the order that we wrote them down on this sheet, but it feels like the most pressing one. Beyond Cooper Cup, is there, and maybe Tyler Higbee, I'll say this, Cooper Cup and Tyler Higbee, are there any other Rams that are worth rostering at this point?
I don't I don't I don't think so. Like obviously you're just not going to release Akers and Henderson because an injury could break your way and one or the other, right? Could be enough to give you something. And running backs are so hard to find. But yeah, I mean, Higby and Cup are for sure the only ones you want to have in a lineup. Like, do you want to start anyone else? I don't.
No.
Like, yeah, I'm done with Allen Robinson. Like in any kind of league where it's not like some of the leagues we play in, you can't cut Allen Robinson because when you look at the waiver wire, you don't even know any of the names. You're like, what
Right?
language is this written in? Like for people even like us that study this all the time, you're like, I don't even know who these players are. Like, are these guys
Bunch
all
of
on practice
creative
squads?
players for Madden and stuff, you know?
Exactly, yeah. And so, in a league like that, you're not going to dump Allen Robinson. So, hear us out. But I again, like going back to how we started the show, like I would drop Allen Robinson for Alec Pierce. I would drop him for Rondell Moore. I would drop him for, insert name George Pickens. I would drop him for all of those types of players if I had an opportunity to do so. You gotta move forward. And you could look up in 2 or 3 weeks and you could be wrong, but we've got 5 weeks worth of data. You have to act on it at this point.
And look, I living here in Los Angeles, I very much see a lot of the Rams. I read a lot about the Rams, and it's not all on Allen Robinson, but to a point, you do have to go out and sort of demand targets. And I saw a video clip recently with Brandon Marshall basically talking about when he was in Denver or when in Chicago, I should say, and he was just being force fed targets by Jay Cutler. And you had other guys like Devin Hester and Earl Bennett saying, hey, look, how do we get ours? We're out here in practice every day. We're sort of working for it. And Brandon saying, look, at some point, if you're Allen Robinson, you've got to go to the head coach and the quarterback and say, hey, I am Allen Robinson. You brought me in here for a reason. You've got to figure out how to get me the football. And you've got to sort of be that diva that we see a lot out of the wide receiver position. So some of that is kind of on him. Some of it though is about an offensive line that just can't give
Yeah.
Stafford time to throw the football. There are
His
so
route
many
tree is
times out
also not great. Like he's really
yeah.
not incorporated into the scheme. That should be his beef with the coach and the quarterback.
And that was
Like,
the
come on,
thing. It's
guys.
funny.
Like if you can't throw me a ball on a hitch route, right? That's just designed to draw coverage down so Cooper Cup can run behind me. Like I'm all for it, but like throw me a bone.
Well, and yeah, I have the good fortune to talk to Maurice Jones-Drew, who works around the Rams as their radio announcer, and I asked, what's going on, and he said, look, they aren't running plays for Allen Robinson. They run a lot of things for Cooper Cup. They're running a lot of things for Tyler Higbee. Robinson's sort of on his own when it comes to getting targets right now, and
But
we'll
I
see if
will
that
say
changes.
there's something to Robinson as well. Like this, he has to own part of this because
Oh yeah.
the team has had Tyler Higbee for how long and never featured him, and now they are. So
Mhm.
that tells me that Tyler Higbee is practicing probably better than Allen Robinson. Like they're not designing a bunch of stuff for Higbee either. They're designing everything for Cooper Cup, and everything is like an offshoot of that,
Mhm.
right? So Allen Robinson's got to be good enough to earn more targets than Tyler Higbee, and he's not. And so I just put that at his feet.
I mean, he's neck and neck with Ben Skoranek when it comes to getting
Oh my
targets,
god,
which
yeah.
is exactly that. That's
See, like
pretty
I'm
much
just
the only
happy when I
reaction.
get to the section of the utilization report that I can remember how to spell Bennett Skoronek's name. Like yeah, I give him the full treatment too. Bennett. We go with the full Bennett
There we
name
go.
on the utilization
His
report.
his full government name, Bennett Skoranek. There it is. So there you go. The Rams are sort of a mess. Matthew Stafford, you mentioned, droppable. Allen Robinson is droppable. Along those lines, Russell Wilson, who has been one of the biggest disappointments, not just in fantasy, but in actual football as well. I mean, for all the excitement that we thought was going to happen when he landed in Denver, it has been the opposite. And so we're ready to pull the shoot on Russell Wilson now too, huh?
Yeah, man, and he's supposed to play this weekend, so now we know he's got the injury as well. I mean, it just at some point you just have to say it is what it is, and they could. I hope they turn it around. Like I have no bad wishes towards Russ or Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy. I have plenty of those 2 guys on fantasy rosters, so I would be fine with Russ turning the corner, and helping out all those other players. I'm just not gonna wait around for him on my fantasy roster. I mean, are you?
I'm not. I drafted him in a couple of spots, but
Me
I'm
too.
moving on. I mean, I've been streaming Ryan Tannehill at times. I've been trying to
That's
figure
when
out
you know things have gotten to another level, when
yeah,
you have to
exactly. When you
start
look around,
when
you're
you're
like, hmm.
streaming someone from a team that doesn't even wanna throw the forward pass.
Right. Ryan Tannehill seems like a better option than what I got right now. That's sort of where I am on some of these rosters that I have. I want to ask you about Antonio Gibson because I know we weren't super excited about him to begin with, but things sort of went in his favor. I mean, look, the situation with Brian Robinson, him getting shot before the season was absolutely terrible, and I'm excited to see him back. I'm glad he's been able to make it back to the field. But it did open up some opportunities for Gibson early in the season that he really just hasn't taken advantage of. And now with Robinson back, it looks like potentially a messy three-headed backfield with JD McKissick there. At worst, I don't know. It feels like Gibson potentially is the odd man out if Robinson comes back and starts looking productive. Either way, I don't think I want any parts of Antonio Gibson anymore.
Yeah, yeah, you just gotta get Antonio Gibson onto the bench. Like he's a player that has the talent profile we've always liked. He can be an explosive playmaker. He's good in the passing game. It's just that he landed in like the worst situation ever. They have JD McKissick. I mean, a guy that played receiver in college. I mean, and Gibson did too. But like, what other backfield can Antonio Gibson land in that where it's like, yeah, dude, you're gonna be the early down grinder. Like, talk about luck. Like sometimes luck just does not break your way in life. And this is for a team that drafted Antonio Gibson in the 3rd round, and a lot of people just dropped their jaw and said, "That's a 5th round pick." But they saw something in him, they took him, and then they said, "We're just kidding. We're not gonna really use you for that." Like, it's just, like, mind-boggling to me. Like, I don't get it, and we've seen him in the games where whenever he does get the routes, it's fine. We saw it in week 1, like, working down the field, getting all these targets. We're like, "Okay, Antonio Gibson, we see you, man. We see you." No, we don't. We haven't seen you since then. Like, since then, it's not been good, and last week was really, it's kind of the nail in the coffin. You get Brian Robinson back. 56% of the rushing attempts went to Robinson. So, that left Antonio Gibson with a 32%, snap share, 19% of the rushing attempts, man. Only out there for 28% of the routes because we already talked about McKissick gets all the long down and distance and 2-minute offense 100%. They don't even let Antonio Gibson have like just a little dash of it, not even a little taste. And he can do it. They don't care. McKissick is out there. In fact, they gave 20% of the 2-minute offense to Brian Robinson.
Hmm.
I mean, you can't get worse for Antonio
Well,
Gibson,
and
man.
it's so weird. You talk about that week one with him being downfield, and that was sort of always our wish. It's like, hey, this is a guy who played wide receiver in college. Why not let him get out there? And look, I know the whole thing about the myth of running backs who line up in the slot. I get all that, but this is still a guy who has that ability to get out and run some downfield routes occasionally and get those targets. And it almost looked like Washington was on the verge of playing sort of positionless football, right? Where you've got Antonio Gibson
Yeah.
going downfield and getting targets. You've got Curtis
Curtis
Samuel,
Samuel.
who
Yeah.
was a hybrid guy at Ohio State. You have him getting some carries, and it felt like this was going to be something kind of cool and
Yeah.
innovative, and
Playmakers,
that's
man. Just move your
that's gone
playmakers around.
away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
totally
gone.
gone away. The worst part to me is that Ron Rivera has teased this consistently with every time he gets a running back who can sort of catch the football. He's like, "Yeah, we got a Christian McCaffrey type guy back here." It's like, stop, just stop it, Ron.
He also compares everything to back to when he had Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. Like
Basically.
he's just
But even
he's
then,
one
like
of
we
those
at least,
people.
those two guys were both productive. Like they found a way to make it work with both those guys for fantasy. And that's just not
But he
happening,
constantly compares, right, like, his backfields now, like, those you had 2 elite backs, like,
right?
those were both first round NFL draft picks.
Yeah.
D'Angelo
Yeah.
Williams and Jonathan Stewart, were really good players coming out of college, but yeah, yeah, man, it's a bummer. It's a bummer, for Antonio Gibson. All these guys we're talking about, we don't wanna see any of these guys fail, but I think they're all worthy of moving on from.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some other guys we sort of touched on. You touched on Chase Edmonds as a guy to get, and then there's a few guys you mentioned that because of buys, probably you can't really hold on to him. Mac Hollins for the Raiders, Traylon Burks, who's also banged up there for the Tennessee Titans, Josh Reynolds, who played well for a couple of weeks for the Lions, but they got some guys getting healthy and they're on a bye this week. So that feels
And
like
eventually you get Jamison Williams too,
get Jameson
so
Williams
yeah.
back. And I think Dwayne, especially at wide receiver, because that position's so deep, it doesn't really make sense to hold on to these sort of middling guys who may not be playing for a week or two.
Yeah, if I'm dealing with buys and I have people like this on my roster, like those are my easy cuts, right? To go pick up someone else, is just cut someone else that's on buy. The other nice thing about that is a lot of times, even if it's someone you kind of like, no one else in your league will touch them either because they're like, well, crap, I'm dealing with a bye week. I can't pick this guy up. Now it's those are better. Those are more likely just to make it, through to the next week. And the other thing is they can't blow up this weekend. They can't blow up, and you're like, oh my god, I got to spend 90% of my fab. He just went off. Like it can't happen to you, right? So, I mean, maybe that's just me being small minded, trying to find some way to make me feel better about making a cut. But I'm like, hey, you can't blow up. You can't blow up
Oh,
because he's on a bye week too. So that's
look,
the
I,
way
I
I treat it.
I think that makes sense. I mean, look, a guy like Mac Hollins may not be of any value to you this week, but hey, there may be a couple weeks down the road when the Raiders are back in action, and
Yep.
he gets those deep shots occasionally from Derek Carr. That maybe
And
he's
he
sort of
had
looked on.
one in the game last night. It was
Yeah,
almost like a field goal. It was like a doink, right off the chest, man. Just a
right.
doink. Like dropped it right in the breadbasket on it,
But at
man.
least the opportunity was there, right?
Yes, the
That's how we
utilization was there, sir.
that's how we can console ourselves with what happened in that game against the Chiefs. Speaking of utilization, be sure to go check out the utilization report at fantasylife.com. Dwayne puts a ton of effort into it, so be sure to check that out. Always plenty of good stuff there. So, good stuff as always for the show, man. And I know you're back to the bunker, getting ready for rankings and turning your attention, like Bill Belichick would say, we're on to week 6 now, right?
We are on to week 6. Today is the day where you turn that page, man. When I start tonight, like pulling in all the data for the rankings, and I get up and start writing that in the morning. Yeah, that's the page. That's the page turn for sure.
So be sure to check out, like I said, the utilization report and prepare yourself for the rankings that are going to come out. And be sure to touch on those we get a little bit later on in the weekend. So hopefully you enjoyed this show. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully you had a little bit of a good time as well. We are certainly not done. We appreciate you tuning in. For Dwayne, I am Marcus. This has been the Fantasy Life Podcast. We'll talk to you again soon.